All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. As a way to begin, I'm going to quick introduce Matt, who's joining us from. Oh, here I'm going to share my screen so everyone can see the Clan Rose International. And I told at the beginning, some of you weren't here, but I joined this organization a little while ago and met Matt through email and invited him to this meeting since we were talking about our heritage. And I just wanted to give a little shout out to the organization, and you can join here. And there's all kinds of interesting things going on. And I think, Matt, if you are willing to give us a short, a brief introduction to yourself and your involvement with the Rose Clan International, that'd be great.
Certainly. Can you hear me fine?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the invite. Lovely to meet all of you. Yes, Clan Rose International. This is our Blue Rose Scottish roots. I'm going back to the 13th century, the 1200s. In the screen that Lisa has up here, that is a rendering of the castle, which still stands today. You can see there's an actual photo down below. And then this is Chief David on the right. He's the current chieftain. The Rose line in Scotland has remained unbroken since the 1200s when they moved into the lands and actually gained these lands through marriages. We weren't a huge warring clan as much as Scotland was. They were early on, but realized it was much easier to gain lands through marriages and arrangements and such, other than fighting. We had close ties with other clans. The Macintosh in particular was a clan that looked out us. We were probably cited with having such a long history because we were kind of mediators in the area. We would host both sides, even during the rising of the Jacobite uprising. We didn't take a side. Some little known history about that is the Battle of Culloden was actually fought about 6 miles to the south of the castle. The in the days or the night prior, we hosted Bonnie Prince Charles. He stayed at the castle before the battle, and the Duke of Cumberland stayed at the Rose Townhouse in Inverness prior to the battle and actually came there. We have handwritten letters between a lot of these people, even going back to like Mary Queen of Scots. But where the Duke of Cumberland came by the following morning on his way to the battle, and they were afraid that they're going to be in trouble for hosting Prince Charles. And he said, "No, you did the right thing. Even though we're on opposite sides, he is a cousin and royalty, and it's great that you can remain loyal." The Nairn River runs right behind the castle, and after the battle, people trying to escape did float down the river and hid out in our woods. Some actually got lost on the way to the battle in our woods. It was quite a large expanse back then, several thousand acres. We did briefly try to provide aid during that time, but soldiers did come by later on and take those patients away. But anyhow, my involvement with the clan is I am their tent convener. I'm on the council for them, and I meet monthly via Zoom meetings just like this with Chief David and 2 of his 4 daughters. Who's Genevieve, the oldest. She will be our heir apparent. She will be the next baroness or chieftain for the Clan Rose. Catherine, the second oldest, who she's quite involved in the history and genealogy portion. David is often on the meetings as well. And then we have here in the States, we have our president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. But my role is tent convener is for all of North America. I help other Roses or people that want to be affiliated with Rose host tents at Scottish and Celtic festivals around the country. And if you look, there is a link on our page here for events and athletes, and you can click on your neck of the woods and the U.S. regions and see different festivals that are coming up. There's some that will be the individuals are hosting, but you can also see other ones that are in your state if you ever want to attend. They're quite exciting. You can attend a Kaylee, which is essentially just a big party. Lots of music, lots of good food. You can meet with, different clan families will have their tents. Most festivals will have a clan row. They call it the family row. That will be all the families, and there's a lot of genealogy that happens there. There's also the Highland Games that occur at most of these, and just something I've hosted clan tents for 4 or 5 years now, and just last year I became an athlete for the clan rows, and that was quite an interesting experience.
Yeah. How did that go?
Good. I competed in 3 games. I had a 5th, a 3rd, and a 2nd.
Wow.
Overall, but I moved partway through the season into the old man group. So I turned 60, and so it actually lowered some of the weights that I had to throw, but I still got to compete with other athletes that are considered masters. They consider you a master at 40, but sometimes events might break it into 40, 50, 60, 70. Sometimes they group us all together. So, but it was a lot of fun. It's more than just throwing heavy stuff. Oh, that's what we like to call ourselves. We throw heavy stuff.
Yeah.
a lot of strategy, mostly around the area of trying to keep you from hurting yourself.
That's right.
Does that include Kyber tosses?
Yep. The caber. Caber is probably one of the most popular events, most visual for sure. The purpose is to, hoist it up. We call it a pick. To get it lifted, balance it, you must take at least 3 steps forward.
Wow.
A little bit of a start, and your goal is to flip it 180 degrees away from you, and a perfect score would be landing at 12 o'clock away from you, and then you're scored degrees off of that. Or if it does not flip, there'll be side judges that also will look and see what angle degree did they go beyond 45? Did it hit 90 but it didn't flip over?
Wow.
Yeah. And we do 9 events typically. Some do much more. There's like tug of war was actually created in Scotland and was a Scottish event. Wrestling, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. We may introduce tug of war at some of the festivals this year. I'm on a board for a festival in a town not far from here, and I assist with helping their festival set up, along with several others that we rent our gaming equipment to and things like that.
Where are you calling in from, Matthew? Where were you?
I live in Holland, Michigan. So in Michigan, we show everybody where we live by doing this, and I live right in here, about 3 miles from Lake Michigan.
Got it.
Thank
Most of you are Pennsylvania?
No, this group is pretty
Arizona.
Yeah.
Oh, Arizona.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Minnesota. New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Wow, you're gonna spread all over.
There is a concentration in Philadelphia.
Brenda's trying to unmute to say that she lives close to you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But she's in Portage, Michigan.
Oh, okay, Portage. So I'm on the board for the Kalamazoo Scottish Festival, which is very near that. And perhaps we've met if you've been to that festival at all.
I have not, but I will look out for it.
Yeah, we come. I think this year it's in September 26th.
It's there on the website.
Yeah, if you want, again, like Lisa mentioned too, if you want to join, it's $25 a year, but we have seniors are free. We value the information and wisdom of our seniors, and we also encourage the teaching of our youth. So youth memberships and senior memberships are free.
Here.
Brenda's
I am
thrown a
not
lot of heavy
positive.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of ancestry. I understand, several of you are interested in genealogy and such, and that's how I became part of this group. Initially was a relative of my father had actually gone to Scotland, and he and one of his elder daughters had written a whole book on our particular line, tracing it back to from Nebraska to the Virginias and then over to Scotland. What time we came over. But there's I believe there's still a link on the Clan Rose website for a DNA thing, and which we really don't care about. The chief, his take on things, anybody can welcome the clan. Clan means children, kin, family. It doesn't matter what your name is or what your DNA is. Everyone is valued, and we'd love to have anybody be part of anything like that.
That's great.
But if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to help you out.
I thought Matthew might like to see how many people have been to Kilrock Castle here.
Yeah, well, I was going to say this is great because this is just what Soni's going to be talking about today, is all this history, and that was great, Matt. Thank you so much for all that information.
Recently,
Take it away, Soni.
Okay, I'll pick up the thread here. Is that okay?
Thursday we go.
So
Yeah,
could
very
people
good.
mute so that we don't hear background conversations?
Yeah.
I see a few people have muted, but if others could mute, and then we'll have a Q&A later if you'd like. So yes, I've been to Kilrock. I got really interested because Chris Clark's lovely wife showed me how interested she was, and she went with at least one of your kids, maybe 2 or 3. And so I got that interest going through the pop-up rose part of the family tree. But today I'm going to talk more about the other direction of the family tree, and that's through grandma. So a couple of things got me going. First of all, I'm retired now, so I have time, but also I live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is one of the oldest American cities. It was established in 1620s. And then I started thinking about the Mayflower, and then Michelle Rose told me, oh yeah, we're connected to the Mayflower people. Yep. So she gave me a first try at that. And then I went to a genealogy workshop, and then I got my daughter involved, and she's a really good researcher. So Heidi can't be here today, but I want to give her a lot of credit. During January and February, she did a deep dive research into our Grandma Rose direction. And I have found it amazing. As a psychology person, I'm fascinated with why do people do what they do, and how do they deal with difficult or exciting opportunities. And so I've decided today I'm just going to share with you a little bit about the 1620s, what our ancestors were doing, and then the 1770s, of course, because there's a lot of news right now about our American Revolution. And up here in New Hampshire, that's no different. We have historical events all the time about New Hampshire was the first to do this, and Massachusetts was the first to do it. So there's a lot of that out there, and they're all very general, but I wanted to be more specific and have names of people and dig a little deeper and figure out what was going on. So I think I'll talk first about the Mayflower connection, and then I'll talk a little bit about the American Revolution connection. And then I'll show you the chart that my daughter made to show you that 7 generations before me and many of you, my generation, we have a person who is an ancestor who worked with George Washington in the American Revolution. But then 12 to 14 generations before me, we have about 16 people on the Mayflower that we're related to. 16! Isn't that amazing? So let me tell you about the Mayflower people first. I'm going to later on put in the comment section here, and maybe Lisa could do that. I sent it to her ahead of time. But there were about 102 travelers on the Mayflower, 37 crew. It took 66 days, 3,000 miles, treacherous trip in the fall of 1620. And they landed very close to where I live here. I mean, Plymouth area is just a couple hours away. And then once they were here, they would look for rivers and inlets. And we have all these historical markers just a few miles from my house that say they came here in 1621 and 1622. So that's sort of fun. Anyway, it was a terrible trip. 3 of the women were pregnant on that ship. Raise your hand if you're a woman who's ever been pregnant and you know what that's like. But imagine being on the Mayflower with all these people. Oh my goodness. And I found out that there were a half a dozen children who were not necessarily related to the other adults. They were indentured servants as young as age 4. These are kids that were throwaways, you know, orphans, sort of like Oliver in Charles Dickens. You know, they just were throwaway children. And they were living in orphanages or on the street. And they were put on there as indentured servants. So you have all different kinds of people on this ship. Some of them were what we call separatists. That means they did not want to be part of the King of England's Anglican Church. It was so oppressive to be part of it because if you didn't worship the way the king wanted you to worship, you could have your property stolen, you could be dragged off and flogged in front of all your neighbors, you could be whipped, it was sort of like the Spanish Inquisition flavor, but up there in England. So some of these separatists, 11 years before 1620, ran off to Holland because there was a little more religious tolerance there. And they lived there for 11 years, sort of in secret, but there was no king that was coming in marching with their soldiers to come get them. So they tried out Holland for quite a while. And then even that became difficult. There was less religious tolerance after 11 years. So they started communicating with what we call adventurers, who are people who are willing to fund another ship going over to America, either Jamestown or the West Indies. Now, you probably all know that Jamestown, Virginia was before the Mayflower people landed. But unfortunately, over 450 of the 500 people that went to Jamestown starved to death. And while they were alive, they had a relationship with the king that said, you have to keep worshiping the way I want you to worship. Whereas these group that came on the Mayflower, they figured out a way to not have to do what the king said about worshiping with the King of England's Anglican Church. So of the people that did come, 37 were crew, 102 people. Less than half of them were what we might call separatists, or other people called them saints, but they never called themselves pilgrims. How many of you went to school and learned about pilgrims who came on the? That's not what they called themselves. So undo that little history. They were separatists, and that's in contrast to people back in England who called themselves Puritans because they wanted to be inside of the Church of England and purify it, make it more Protestant, less king-centered. It was very difficult for them to do that, but they tried. Okay, so we have these separatists that have come over, and you have people who have no interest in religious freedom, and they were the adventurers. They either helped fund this trip because it was not free, or they had a deal with people who were funding them to bring stuff back as the ship would go back and forth and start trade. Unfortunately, out of the 102 passengers, about 55 of them died very quickly within the first year. That was very sad, and they died not necessarily on the ship. One did, one child died. And then once they came into the Cape Cod, Plymouth, Massachusetts area, one of our ancestors who's really famous, his name is William Bradford, his wife literally fell into the water at Cape Cod. They had just pulled the ship up and she never touched land. She died right there. It was so sad. He went on to marry again, which many people did. Let me pause for a minute and tell you about William Bradford. William Bradford was one of the first governors of the Plymouth colony, and he was our ancestor. And he wrote a book. I didn't know this until just 2 weeks ago, but I did a little research and I found it. And apparently he wrote this handwritten manuscript across 20 years where he was the governor and then he wasn't, and then he was and he wasn't. And that alternated because of elections. They started having elections, not honoring the king, but having elections. But he was a key person for many years. And he wrote this whole manuscript, which eventually apparently went over to England and was sitting in some church over there for hundreds of years. Then that church gave it back to the state of Massachusetts. Somebody typed it all up and made an audiobook. And I just listened to the whole thing last week. It was like I had an eyewitness account of who did what. How did they deal with the Native Americans? How did they deal with the next ship that came? The whole immigration kept coming. It was great. So if you have nothing to do, and you're bored out of your mind, listen to the book called Of Plymouth Plantation, William Bradford. You can get a printed copy in most libraries probably, but it was so great to do the audiobook and just picture what it was like 400 years ago. Anyway, so they came, and unfortunately with the first season that they were here, many of them just went and sat on the ship because there was no place to sleep in the winter. There was no buildings, of course, and they weren't yet friendly with any of the Native Americans. And diseases like pneumonia, scurvy, which you may know if you don't have vitamin C, you're not healthy, tuberculosis. So a lot of people died. Now, in general, there are 37 million people in the world who are related to Mayflower people, so we're not very special. But I like to make that little human connection anyway. I just find it fascinating. So the Mayflower ship, they can't find it anymore. It was probably dismantled decades after it brought people here. But there's been a rebuilt one, a replica. And right this week, in fact, it's down in Connecticut at Mystic Seaport getting fixed up again. And it's going to come up. And next week, it's coming back to Plymouth. And so I'm on a mission to go down there and say hello to the Mayflower. I did that down in Jamestown many years ago where they have their replica. Anyway, so I am very interested in that. Now, some of our relatives, I think maybe somebody did put it into the chat. Let's see if that did happen. Okay. You do not have to memorize oh, you found the book. Good for you. You don't have to memorize all the names of our relatives, but I want to highlight another one that's pretty amazing. Let me go back to this.
Just really quick, I put 2 links in there. One is to Abe Books. I'm sure you can get the book elsewhere too, but
yeah.
And then one is also a PDF version that you could download or just read.
Yes. So some of you, I know Michelle Rose is the one that told me that we're related to the Alden family. Alden Road, right? I don't know if they're connected at all. But anyway, Aldens, I'll tell you a little bit about them before I shift over to the 1700s. So there was a family that was not necessarily all that big on the religious freedom thing, and it was the Mullins family. There was a dad, there was a mother, there was a daughter, there was a son. The children were teenagers. And the father, he was a shoemaker. So in this very tiny boat called the Mayflower, they were allowed to bring a few things. He brought 126 pairs of shoes. At first, I thought he was like that Filipino princess who had millions of shoes. And I thought, oh, how vain. But then I realized, no, he knew people would need shoes. And he brought 13 pairs of boots too, various sizes. Unfortunately, he died. His daughter lived, Priscilla Mullins lived. She got all the shoes. And that put her sitting pretty because she could trade shoes for, can I have one of your chickens for dinner and you can have some shoes? So it became one of the trade commodities. So that was pretty interesting. So Priscilla was a teenager, orphaned, lived a long time. And one of the crew was a guy named John Alden. And he was a cooper. Raise your hand if you know what that means. And it's not Kent Cooper's man. Okay, so cooper meant you built barrels and you maintained the barrels, which held food and other things. And that was very important because he was sort of like, managing the groceries and et cetera. So when they got here and everybody was too sick to go back, but John Alden lived and he said, well, maybe I'll stay. There's this cute girl over here named Priscilla. So within 2 years, they were married, John and Priscilla. And if you go down to Plymouth area, there is a rebuilt copy of their house. Looks like this. And I decided to join the Alden Club. I just want to meet some of my buddies, my relatives. So it's not open in the wintertime, and we still have winter snow on the ground up here. So in a month or two, I'll try to go down there and check my genealogy with some of the experts. So anyway, they had a dozen children, and then they had a dozen children. And sound familiar? Yeah, yeah. So I have a genealogy chart that I'll show you in a minute. But now I'm going to shift you over to the 1770s. Around here, there's a lot of talk about the American Revolution. You know, New Hampshire wants to claim this and claim this. And the first thing that caught my interest, and this is not our relative, but this was what caught my interest because it was a big deal up in here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And that is, okay, it's 1770 something. And George Washington was married to Mary Washington, and they had slaves. And when one of their slaves was about a teenager, and she was a mixed race, her father was a white man who was a tailor, seamstress, and his wife, if you will, or the mother of this young lady, was one of the slaves who also knew how to sew. I'm a seamstress, so I identify with them. Anyway, her name was Ona, and she was being given like a gift. She's a person, but she's being given to a relative, and she escapes. And George Washington chased her for 20 years and never got her. And she landed here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So we have a big new plaque up on right here that says, Ona Judge, escaped from George and Mary Washington. And he was the president, and he never could find her. So anyway, she settled here, got remarried or got married, had kids, hid from George Washington for many years. So that caught my interest, and I just find that amazing. While I'm on George Washington, and then I'll get over to our relative, I find it fascinating that one of the things about the American Revolution was we were trying not to have a king and then their descendants be the next king and the next king or queen, right? And George Washington, although he married Mary Washington, who had 4 kids from a previous relationship, the 2 of them never had a child. He had no son biologically. And I think that was providence because, you know, it might have been tempting for them to say, oh, he was the president, now we have to have his son be the next president. Couldn't happen. He gracefully stepped away and somebody else was, quote, elected. I find that amazing. Okay, so George Washington knew our relative. Our relative is named Lieutenant Perrin Ross, R-O-S-S, not R-O-S-E, R-O-S-S. So this is Grandma Rose's relative. I'll show you that one in a minute. Lieutenant Perrin Ross was born, believe it or not, on the 4th of July, before the 4th of July was an important date. I think there's a song, born on the 4th of July, right? Anyway, he was born in Connecticut. I used to live in Connecticut, and I know with this location that he used to live in. And he became a military person, probably during the French-Indian War, and then he got called up to be part of the American Revolution. So he was probably at Valley Forge, and some people think that there's evidence that he was with George Washington crossing the Delaware to sneak up on people in New Jersey. So he fought bravely. His family was given land in Pennsylvania, about 2,000 acres. And I don't know if that was granted from the British royalty or from the American colonists. It's a little hard to tell who owns what land in the 1770s. And then, of course, we had 2 or 3 Native American groups that all felt, this is our land. They didn't have written documents, but they said it was theirs. So during the 1770s, in that part of the what we call the Susquehanna Valley, you've probably heard of the Susquehanna River that flows down into Pennsylvania. Well, up in the Poconos, which is where I used to live as well, he was trying to go there in 1777 and 1778 to sort of establish, this is our family land. We've been given this. Fight, 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 fight. And unfortunately, we had the bloodiest battle of the whole Revolutionary War is in the Wyoming Valley. The word Wyoming comes from Native Americans. It's been anglicized. I looked it up, but it's a really beautiful word, Wyoming. We have a state named Wyoming as well. But the Wyoming Valley is called the Wyoming Massacre, and that's where our relative died, along with many other people. But his wife escaped, and his wife was named Mercy Otis. We are related to her. She was pregnant when he died. She already had 5 children. And she had to figure out how to get from the Pocono Mountains over back to home base in Connecticut. By the time they got there, I mean, there's rivers in the way, there's mountains in the way. Brave lady, brave lady. Anyway, she got back to Connecticut, barefoot, raggedy, alive, and one of her kids became one of our relatives. Eventually, their family moved over. She married again, and they moved up to upstate Pennsylvania in an area called Wellsboro. Does that sound familiar? Wells? That's the connection down to us. So anyway, I've decided to apply to the Daughters of the American Revolution. And any of you could. And there's also a Sons of the American Revolution. The only reason I want to do that is because I can learn more about the history. And I don't really like to talk about current politics too much. It makes everybody angry at each other. But I like to talk about history. So I've just gone to one meeting, and who knows, maybe I'll join. So now I'm going to do my trick of trying to share a screen. All right, here we go.
I believe in you.
See if I can make it big. How do I make that big? Oh, here we are.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You did it.
So
You did it.
I did it. Okay, I'm learning how to zoom in and zoom out. So I'm going to zoom out. Can everybody, oh, too far. Can everybody see a big square that's gray with all these little dots on it?
Yep.
Okay. Down at the bottom is my daughter's generation, Heidi and Emily. And then the next generation up is me and Jeremy and Lisa. We're all of that generation. And so can you see my little marker that's moving around? Okay, I'll zoom in a minute, but I just wanted you to get the big picture and then I'll back up or zoom in. So this is me and Neil, my husband, and this is my parents. Marjorie is my mom, Midge, and this is our Grandma Rose. And then you go up a few generations, and right about here is Lieutenant Perrin Ross in the Revolutionary War about 7 generations ago, and then boom, boom, bump, bump, bump. Or if you want a little variety, all the way up here or all the way up here. Everybody up here, if they've got a little blue circle, they are Mayflower people. Isn't that fun? So let me zoom in on Perrin Ross. Over here on the left, you see this? Okay, that's Perrin Ross. He was the Revolutionary hero. This is Mercy. And their daughter is Elizabeth Ross, down here. And then she married a Wells, and on it goes. And I can give you more details if you're interested. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit and do this and go up to the Mayflower people. I'll just pick out 1 or 2, because there's a lot of them. All right, so over here on the left, Richard Warren is a very well-known Mayflower person. If you wanted to just look up 1 or 2 of them, Richard Warren is well-known. So Richard Warren, he, I think, spent time as one of our governors. Yep. And he recruited London merchant adventurers. So it was like they banked it. They had money to make this adventuresome thing happen. Mayflower first, and then lots and lots of other people came after that. Oops, I'm not very good at this, I apologize. Okay, so over here also, I mentioned William Bradford, who wrote the book. So interesting. And over there on the left, you see Dorothy May. That's who fell in the water. And then a few years later, he married Alice Carpenter. And that's how we come down here through our connections. And here is John Alden, who was a cooper by trade and married the orphaned teenager Priscilla Mullins. And up here above, there we've got William Mullins. He was the shoe man. He brought 120 something pairs of shoes so they could survive the winter. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so and down here through the many generations, I'm going to zoom out now so you can kind of see there is quite a few stories here. So if anybody wants to unmute and ask me questions about this, I could do that. Otherwise, I could stop sharing. If you want to unmute and ask me a question, maybe, Lisa, you can look for hands up.
Yep. You can, I think anybody has a question, they can just jump right in. If it gets crazy, I'll start to mute people.
Okay.
If there's, but thanks for my amazing, first of all, I just have to say amazing, Soni, very exciting stories. And now I take more pride in my shoes from now on. And there's so many interesting stories here. Amazing research. Thank you.
We have a lot of heroes and heroines in our past. And anytime I feel like I'm losing courage in life, I just think of them and what they survived wars and terrible journeys, just amazing. And just thinking of that whole motivation to come across the ocean to an unknown place because they wanted religious freedom, and then to start governing themselves without a king. Isn't that amazing?
I'm muted, just say something.
Yep, go ahead and just shout out if you have a question.
This is Grant. I don't have a question, just a point of interest. When you mentioned the wars up in the Pocono Mountains, you can do a little research on the two Pennamite Wars, the wars between Pennsylvania and Connecticut.
Right.
They fought bitterly over the, quote, Pocono Mountains. All battles weren't massacres in the traditional sense. They were sieges of forts, and they would starve the people, and eventually, when they were starving, they would let them out into what was known as the Great Swamp, where they all perished. So there's a history there as well, prior to the Pocono, quote, mountains.
Yep.
Is that
And the Susquehanna Valley, just south west of where you are, Grant and Jeannie, it's just beautiful. This river and this beautiful valley nearby. You could see why people wanted to live there, but it became, contentious, quite unfortunately.
I hope I put the right link in, but I put the Pennamite Yankee Wars from Wikipedia. It says Susquehanna River, so I figured that was the right link.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing those links. While you're at it, Alden, ALDEN.org. In case you're interested in the Priscilla and John Alden all the way down. They're one of the most well-known couples, and they have, a reenactment of their house, and people get into living history costume and everything every summer. So if you want to come up here, they have a gathering. Anyway, any other questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
It's further down, but I think when you were scrolling past, I saw Starkey.
Yes, let me zoom in on that. Okay.
When I was young, they told me I'm related to Ringo Starr, and now I hear that maybe I'm not.
I remember hearing that same claim to fame. But Starkeys, there's a lot of Bernathen people who are Starkeys. I think a lot of the Pitcairns are related to the Starkeys. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, Moses Starkey. Isn't that a great name? Moses Starkey. There we are. Coming down the line here. So then we have Moses Starkey, Daniel Starkey, George Starkey, and wife. And then you get to Mary Pauline Starkey. I bet you've heard of that name, right? Mm-hmm. That's Grandma Rose's mom, mm-hmm. who married John Augustus Wells. Okay. So the Starkey clan, I cannot prove that Ringo Starr stars in short for Starkey. If anybody can do that, they get the Olympic medal, because I don't know how to do that.
I know that Ringo Starr's actual name is Richard Starkey.
That's what I heard.
But I've heard that, no, it's not the same line or something.
Right. We're not related.
If we go back far enough, we're related to everybody, so we can just say it.
Yeah, we all come from the same caveman, right?
and just for Matt's sake, you mentioned Bryn Athyn, which is the town in northeast of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, where my grandparents lived and raised their children, and so that's sort of where a lot of that area is where a lot of the family still lives.
Right. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. See if I did that right.
Look at that. You did it just like that.
Learning. So did anybody learn anything new? Any tidbit? I'd love to hear what people learned that they found intriguing, because maybe you'll go down another rabbit hole and find out even more cool stuff.
Well, I thought all the little stories that you told, each one of them, I feel like, ooh, I want to learn more about that. So it's a little overwhelming because there's so many things. And, but I love what you say about, all of us are here because all of our ancestors survived. And, that if you look back, the farther back you go, I think sometimes the harder and harder life gets, and the more chance you're going to die of disease or war or, whatever is happening. And so it is a testament to our, the tenacity or what or cleverness or luck or whatever it is that we're here. And I also want to know why so many of our relatives were running away from England. Was there were we all getting in trouble and having to leave the country, or maybe it was just for freedom?
Religious persecution.
Yeah, religious
freedom was often a
persecution, yeah.
motivation if you were self-compelling yourself. You were
Yeah.
immigrating on purpose. But there were times when Scotland, unfortunately, in England and Ireland, they'd have fights, and then there'd be prisoners of war. And so there's some research that I haven't quite nailed down that says many of the Rosses that ended up in Connecticut were forced immigration. They were prisoners of war, and they didn't want them around anymore, so they put them on a boat and sent them over.
Oh, wow.
Started populating a lot of the Rosses in Connecticut.
Like
I don't know if those are our relatives, but they may have been Perrin Ross's distant relatives, because we're more related to his wife, Mercy.
Barry, go ahead.
You had a thought.
Soni, when you are in Plymouth, Massachusetts,
Yes.
for the redocking of the Mayflower.
Yeah, next week.
Right across the street is Ziggy's Ice Cream and Seafood Bar. That has been owned, now I don't know who owns it, but that was owned by my wife's family, Isolina Clara Rubettini Mondo, and her brother, Argio Peter Rubettini. And my wife grew up in the apartment building right there that her mother owned. And from her porch with a good arm, you could throw a rock onto the Mayflower.
Or Plymouth Rock, whichever one.
Yeah.
It's easier to hit the Mayflower because the Plymouth Rock is about this big.
I've been there many times.
That's amazing.
That is so great, Barry. Thank you. I love that.
I wanted to mention that Harry Grubb's middle name is Warren. I heard the Warren name go by in your genealogy.
Richard Warren. Yep.
No, it's Harry Warren Grubb.
Harry Warren.
And I don't know where that came from, but my thought was that it came from the Grubb side somehow. But that may be false information.
But it's fun to see that. And Lori, my sister, has a daughter named Mercy. And Mercy Otis. Apparently, Mercy is a common Christian name. I had not heard it until Lori used it as one of her kids. But that appears a couple of times in our past.
Yep. Marjorie, you had a comment?
Warren Grubb was my grandfather.
Oh.
My grandfather, Warren Grubb, so it was totally a different line.
Okay.
Grubb line. And he was separated from our grandmother, and we never really met him, but he was my father.
Okay, so 2 generations before you. Got it. Anybody else enjoy hearing a little tidbits about our past? What struck you, Chris?
Well, I was trying to visualize the conditions that the Mayflower group and then subsequent groups faced, which were like a really bad laurel camp.
A lot of sickness.
But it lasted all year long, and it was hard to get to the grocery store.
Yeah,
you had to grow your own, and that always didn't work out to be a balanced diet or even a sufficient diet. It was
right.
The whole colonies were a tough way to live for many generations. Never mind the warfare part. I mean, that's terrible, but just the conditions of everyday life were way tougher than we've become used to.
We should stop whining, don't you think, compared to what they lived? Stop whining. I'm thinking about as Mayflower people came, within 10, 20 years, lots more people came. And the adventurers, the people who invested money in all of this, said the number one thing we want is beaver pelts, because there were no more beavers in all of Europe or England. They'd all been killed to make people's hats. And so up here in New England, beavers were just so important. So people were learning how to go catch the beavers. They learned from mostly Native Americans, and they'd send beaver pelts back, and that would sort of pay off anything that they had been borrowing for all these years. You'd send beaver pellets, and they might send you a cow. I mean, that's what it was like. Oh, I see Liz. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so one thing was I was really struck by the story about the woman who was supposed to be given away and escaped and managed to evade George Washington for 20 years. That's a pretty striking accomplishment. But when you say that about the beaver hats, last October I was up in Grand Portage, Minnesota, up along the north shore of Lake Superior, which was a huge trading hub, and the Grand Portage was from all of the people in the West who were catching those beavers. And like that was the big thing. So we go to Grand Portage National Park, and there's this, the fort there that was kind of the center of commerce. And one of their big things is they showed a shop with the beaver hats and all the things that would be made with beaver. That was the driving force of that whole thing and what the voyagers would do. So the beavers would come from Minnesota and further west and be taken by boat through Lake Superior and all the way up and through Montreal and then across the ocean to England to feed that appetite for the beaver hats.
Everybody had to have a beaver hat. Now, I don't know if I said out loud, back to the other story of the escaping woman who used to be a slave to George Washington. Her name, if you want to look it up, is O-N-A, Ona. Her last name was Judge, J-U-D-G-E. Such a remarkable story. I had never heard of her until there was a big deal about her last year. And we put a big plaque up down the street from here. And I went, what? And I identify with her as coming from seamstress kind of families,
Now,
Soni was alive.
Soni, to clarify, was she a relative or was this a story? She's not a relative. Okay.
She was not a relative, but she got me interested in, can I relate to anything in the Revolutionary War? And so I first got that everywhere around here. People are mentioning Ona Judge. And then I went, I wonder if we have any relatives. So when my daughter and I went on to, you may know that the way you can do some research for free is familysearch.org. That's owned by the Mormon Church. Anybody in the whole world can use their lineage. If people have put stuff in, and they'll tell you if it's pretty reliable, they do it because, the Mormons do it because they have to know their ancestor's name and then they pray for them. We do not have to join the Mormon Church. Anybody's allowed to go and search. And they cover most of the people in America that have already passed away, somewhat Canada, somewhat the British Isles, and now they're expanding even farther. But anyway, it's a very easy to use if you want to kind of dig around and find stuff and then look up their names.
What's it called again, Soni?
One word is familysearch.org. And don't be put off that it's owned by the Mormon Church. You can do a little bit just as a visitor, kind of puttering around. And then at a certain point, they say, would you please make a membership? But you're not joining the church. You're just saying, I want to come back here frequently. And then you just get kind of a username. But they don't cost you any money. They're really terrific. Oh, good. You found it. Yeah, they're pretty great.
Yeah, putting a lot of links in the chat if anybody's interested, including the list that I had to put it in. It wouldn't let me put it all at once. So 3 different entries at the beginning of the relatives that were on the Mayflower that Soni compiled is in there.
Yeah, if you want to look them up. Pretty great stuff.
Great research, Soni. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Are you familiar with Christine Rose?
What?
She's a genealogist. Christine Rose?
We're not talking about Lisa's sister, are we?
Christine? No, not my sister.
No. She lives in California. In fact, I imagine at this time she's in some type of care facility. But she did a lot of Rose genealogy over many years. And on our site, we do have some of her books. And I was just looking through one of them, maybe of interest to you. It's Descendants of Robert Rose, of Branford and Wethersfield, Connecticut. These are roses that came on the ship Francis from Ipswich, England in 1634.
Okay, part of the next
Christine
migration
put
of
that
people.
together.
Mm.
Yeah, so I thought that might be connections to you. In the
Thank
Scottish line, I know the name Ross and the name Rose are two very distinct, separate clans.
They're
Rose
separate.
in the Scottish.
Right.
Yes, yeah. Roses were originally Normans from France, and the
Right.
name was de Ross
Mhm.
that time. There is an ebook on there that explains some of that early Anglo-Norman history. There's also a book that Christine had republished that is the history of Kilrock roses from 1290 to 1847. This book was originally written by Hugh Rose, who was one of the bairds or barons of Kilrock. I forget which number he was, but
Mhm.
he originally wrote that from all the information he had in the 1700s, I believe. Then there's another one that Christine did of two brothers. They're Reverends Robert and Charles Rose, who came in um, through Morayshire, Scotland, Wester Allies, but they were our colonial Virginia connection.
Interesting.
So that's on the website as well. I'm putting a link there just directly to the
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
believe there's a tab in there for books.
Yep. I
They're
just
kind of limited quantities,
Thank
but
you.
they are quite informational, and they have a lot of. If you're into genealogy, there's a lot of information in there that's really interesting.
I've caught the fever. Genealogy is a fever.
Well, I think it's kind of fun. It worked out that Matt could be here today when you're talking about Grandma Rose Wells.
Well,
And he's talking a little bit about that and how the two, I like too that the English Scottish stuff and then back together. And, it's just great looking
you
back.
look on a map of where Kilrock is, where the Rose clan originated, and then across some water, I forget if it's something Firth, is where we think Ross was, right? So, and everything I see says, no, they were not together. But professionally, I identify more with Roses because, as you said, they were mediators. They figured out how to have contracts with each other instead of fighting with each other. I don't know if the Rosses were the same way. I guess they had more of a fighting spirit. I'm not sure. I'm still digging around about them.
On my opposite, my grandmother's side, on my mother's side, is Campbell, and that's, if you're familiar with Scotland, that's probably the most warring clan that Scotland ever had. And
yeah.
talk about some of your escaping. We had arranged marriages. There is a story about a girl that was arranged that we would have picked up Campbell lands through this marriage, where the grandmother burnt the key of Kilrock Castle image into this girl's leg at the age of 10. And they hid her away, and they knew that was the way they would be able to identify her. But the Campbells originally did capture her and change that lineage. So we didn't obtain those lands. Ironically, the Campbells, their seat is Cotter Castle. Colin Cotter recently bought Kilrock and is renovating it to make it his personal home. But just this weekend, first time in 10 years, they've had an event on the ground. They're having a big Easter event, and
that's great.
They're there doing Easter egg hunts, and then my wife and I are going Thursday. We go over for a couple of weeks.
Good.
Great. Is there anybody else who has been besides Soni? Oh, sorry, Matt. There's a little delay.
Oh no, I was thinking wonderful information gathered there.
Is there anybody else here who has been to Kilrock besides Soni in this group? No.
Chris's family.
Chris.
Finn and at least maybe three of their kids, right?
Just one. Primrose and her mother, Trinket, went together.
Okay.
Probably in 2017 or 2016.
Okay, we've been closed then. It was so Rose lived in the castle until 2012. That's when Chief David's aunt Elizabeth was the Baroness at the time. She never had children, so when she passed, the only remaining relative was her sister Marjorie, who was David's mother, and the lineage, and she was also deceased, so it passed on to David. Yeah, unfortunately, we weren't able to gain the castle back. Elizabeth had left it to a Scottish Christian trust who were helping her run it as a bed and breakfast. We went through many, many legal battles because we were never able to see who the trustees of this were. They sold it without anything else, and we're actually finding that many artifacts that were in the castle are turning up in museums all over the country that they had also sold off. But with the working with some of those, we are getting some things back. And Colin Cotter, who now owns the castle, is going to allow us to do games and gatherings there on some sort of semi-annual basis. He will maintain a Rose Museum in the tower portion of the castle, with anything we can retain.
That's great.
Quite interesting stuff.
It is interesting. Yeah. What fun.
Well, thank you again, Soni, for all your work. That was amazing. I really appreciate it.
I'll tell Heidi. She deserves a lot of the credit.
Oh,
she
yeah.
really is a pursuer of details, and she'd call me every other day. Mom, did you know this? Mom, did you know this? So we've had fun together.
And I know that Michelle, I don't think Michelle, I heard her voice, but I don't see her on here now. I'm not sure if she's still here, but has done a lot of work too. And Daniel has also done a lot, Dan Clark, and there's a different people that have found this same interest, and it's very exciting. Thanks for sharing it all. And thanks everybody for coming. Thanks, Matt, for joining us. Great to meet you, and I hope our paths cross again. I'm excited about coming to Kalamazoo for some fun throwing.
Yeah, was it Liz that's in Portage?
Pardon me?
Who's in Portage again?
Oh,
who's in Portage, Michigan?
I think Brenda is.
Brenda is, yep. And she's got purple wall.
Yeah.
Okay,
yep. Brenda Morgan. I am in Portage.
Oh, okay.
And I'm in
Brenda, it's at Kindleberger Park.
It's at Kindleberger? Okay.
Oh, okay.
I know where that is.
Yep, Kindleberger Park, September the 26th, I believe. But if you look it up, it's the Kalamazoo Scottish Festival. It's, I think, the 34th year.
That's
amazing. That festival.
I'm definitely have it on my calendar.
Holland Celtic Festival is the first one that's on my schedule this year in June. It's also Sparta. These are all quite north of you. Saline, maybe, I'm not positive where that's at exactly.
Saline is straight east of us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But Kalamazoo is a very nice one. The park is a nice venue there. You get to see quite a bit of stuff. They have a very nice clan row, a nice gaming area. We're getting a lot more notable bands and things like that.
So yeah, if you go
thanks again for inviting.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And there, I put the link in there also for the clan events, so you can see if there's one near you.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you for organizing this. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Keep throwing heavy stuff.
Yeah.